I woke up to the sound of something scraping across the wood outside my kitchen door. It was just past 5 in the morning. The light outside was dim, that bluish-gray glow before sunrise. I live alone, in a wooden cabin near the tree line on the eastern ridge of the Gallatin Range. Out here, weird noises are part of the soundtrack of life. But this wasn't a branch or raccoon. I stepped to the window and slowly moved the curtain. At first, I couldn't see anything. Just fog rolling low over the ground, and dew clinging to the grass. Then, she moved. A massive shape, ghost white and spotted, slowly emerged from behind the water barrel. My heart caught in my throat. It was a snow leopard. I had only ever seen one once before, from a distance, high on a trail. And now, one was crouched no more than 15 feet from my door, ribs showing, breathing shallow, looking around like she didn't even have the strength to be afraid. She was starving. I could see it in every inch of her frame. Her tail was dragging. Her paws trembled when she shifted her weight. I didn't move. She looked up at me. Her eyes met mine through the glass, and we just stared at each other for a few seconds that felt like 100 years. I backed away slowly, went to the fridge, and grabbed the leftover elk meat from the stew I'd made 2 nights ago. I walked carefully back to the door. She was still there, head down, just watching. I cracked the door open and slid the bowl out with my foot, then stepped back. She didn't touch it right away. She sniffed the air, took a few slow steps forward, and then collapsed near the bowl. Her body shook, and for a moment I thought she might not make it through the hour. But a minute passed, then 2. Then she reached forward and took a bite. She didn't devour it. She ate slowly, cautiously, watching me the entire time. I didn't move a muscle. After about 10 minutes, she stood. Her legs were wobbly, but she walked back into the mist and disappeared beyond the trees. I barely slept the rest of the morning. I spent the entire day thinking about her. Who she was, where she'd come from, how she'd even ended up this close to a human settlement. Snow leopards were ghosts up here, silent, unseen, and this one had walked up to my back door like she had nowhere else to go. By sunset, I had convinced myself it was a one-time thing. Maybe she was just passing through. Maybe she'd been injured or separated from a mate. But deep down, I knew she would come back. I left another bowl out that night. Sure enough, around midnight, I heard soft footsteps on the gravel. I peeked outside and saw her again, standing where the food had been. This time, she finished the bowl in a few bites. Then, instead of leaving, she sat. Just sat. In the dark. Watching the house. Watching me. I sat down on the floor inside, back against the door. And I watched her too. This became our routine. Every night for the next 4 nights, she came back. Each time, looking a bit more alert. A bit steadier on her legs. I didn't try to get closer. I didn't try to touch her. I just left the food and waited. I started keeping a journal. Not just to track her visits, but to process everything. I found myself checking the clock constantly in the evenings, anticipating her arrival. Her presence had become something I relied on, something grounding. One night, I stayed outside longer than usual. It was unusually warm for this time of year, and the stars were incredibly clear. She arrived a bit later than normal. When she saw me already outside, she hesitated. I sat still. She approached slowly. For the first time, she laid down within 10 feet of me. That was the night I realized this wasn't just about food anymore. There was something else happening here. A fragile trust. A silent agreement between 2 very different creatures, both navigating a world that had grown too loud, too dangerous. Then, yesterday, everything changed. She didn't come at midnight. Or at 1. By 3 in the morning, I started to worry. I stepped outside with a flashlight and walked down the short path to the edge of the woods, calling out softly. Nothing. No eye shine. No sound. And then, just as I turned to head back in, I heard the faintest noise. It was a whimper. Not from her, but from something smaller. I turned and aimed the flashlight toward the rocks near the creek, and there she was. But she wasn't alone. 3 small shapes moved near her legs. Cubs. 3 snow leopard cubs. One was struggling to stand. Another was pressed against her side. The third was barely moving. I froze. She looked up at me again, her eyes tired but calm. She took 1 step forward, then another, and then she sat. She nudged one of the cubs forward with her nose. She had brought them to me. I didn't know what to do. They were thin, too thin. Their coats were patchy in places, and the smallest one made this terrible wheezing noise every time it tried to breathe. My instinct said run inside, get food, blankets, water. But my feet didn't move. I just stood there, watching this wild, endangered animal ask me for help in the only way she could. She lowered herself next to the weakest cub and curled her body around them all. Her eyes never left mine. I whispered, okay, I'll help you. I took a slow step forward, then another. She didn't flinch. I crouched near the edge of the clearing and placed a fresh bowl of food and a thermos of warm water. I didn't try to touch them. I just sat, maybe 15 feet away, and waited. She let the strongest cub eat. Then the next. The smallest one didn't move. She licked its face gently, over and over. I stayed with them until the sun started to rise. The cold crept up my legs, but I didn't care. She eventually looked at me again, then rested her head on her paws. That morning, I called the only vet I knew who wouldn't think I was insane. Dr. Morrison lived 2 towns over. An older guy who had a reputation for helping with wildlife. I didn't explain much over the phone, just asked him to come. He didn't hesitate. While waiting, I ran back and forth between the house and the tree line. I warmed up old towels in the dryer, boiled water, found an old dog crate in the shed and scrubbed it clean. I didn't know what I'd need, so I gathered everything. The mother watched me, never growled, never moved. When Dr. Morrison arrived, he parked a few hundred feet away and walked up slowly. I met him halfway and told him everything. I was shaking the whole time. He didn't doubt me. He didn't lecture me. He just said, let's take a look. We approached the leopards together. The vet crouched low, whispering constantly, hands open. He didn't touch anyone right away, just observed. Finally, he looked up and said, this little one won't last another night. We have to move him. And I nodded. From that point on, my life wasn't going to be the same. We moved quickly. The weakest cub was barely breathing, and time was slipping through our fingers. Dr. Morrison wrapped the little body in a warm towel, holding him close to his chest like something sacred. The mother snow leopard stood still the entire time. She watched us, her muscles taut, but she never growled, never stepped forward. It was like she understood, like she had already made the decision to trust us, even if it went against everything in her wild nature. I led the vet to my old pickup. We placed the wrapped cub inside a crate I had lined with more towels and a hot water bottle. Dr. Morrison adjusted a small oxygen mask over the cub's face, something he always kept with him, just in case. I couldn't stop glancing back at the tree line, expecting the mother to change her mind, to charge, to take back her baby. But she didn't. She sat, still as a statue, staring at me. I gave her one last look. I'll bring him back, I said aloud, not even sure if I believed it myself. We drove in silence. It took over an hour to reach Dr. Morrison's place. He lived on the edge of a valley town, in a small home with an attached barn he used for rescues. The place smelled like hay, antiseptic, and warm fur. As soon as we got the cub inside, he set to work. I watched him clean the cub's nose, check his vitals, inject fluids, and wrap him in layers of blankets. I felt completely useless, standing there like some misplaced shadow. Dr. Morrison finally looked up and said, you did the right thing, but he's not out of the woods yet. I nodded. What do we do now? We wait. I stayed the night on a cot in the barn. The cub didn't make a sound, but his little chest moved up and down in shallow breaths. Every hour, the vet checked on him, adjusted something, whispered reassurances. I didn't sleep. I just kept thinking about the mother and the other 2 cubs waiting in the woods. At sunrise, I drove back home. When I pulled up to the cabin, the mother was gone. But there were fresh paw prints in the mud, leading from the edge of the clearing to the door and back. She'd been there. The other 2 cubs were curled up under the porch, shivering slightly, pressed against each other. I knew I couldn't leave them out in the open any longer. I cleaned out the old tool shed behind the cabin, a place I hadn't touched in years. I lined the floor with straw and thermal blankets, patched the holes in the roof with tarp, and even installed a small space heater I used for my greenhouse. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the cold ground. I placed fresh meat and water inside, then carefully picked up the 2 cubs one by one. They were light, fragile. One hissed weakly but didn't fight. I settled them into the shed and left the door open, hoping their mother would find them. And she did. That evening, just after dusk, I saw her emerge from the trees. She sniffed the ground, padded silently to the shed, and slipped inside. I watched from the kitchen window. She didn't come out for hours. That night, I finally slept. For maybe 2 hours. Then the nightmare started. Not of the leopards, of people. Guns. Shouting. Someone dragging the animals out in sacks. My cabin on fire. I woke up drenched in sweat. The next morning, I started making calls. I couldn't exactly Google how to care for snow leopards in your shed, but I found a few obscure forums and veterinary networks where researchers and wildlife rescuers posted. Some suggested calling wildlife services immediately. Others warned that doing so could lead to the animals being euthanized or relocated to zoos. The advice was inconsistent, contradictory. One message stood out. A woman named Denise from Montana had once cared for a wounded lynx before handing it off to a sanctuary. She warned me to be careful who I told. People panic when it comes to predators, even if they're babies. I didn't post anything. I didn't leave a name. I just watched and read. Around noon, Dr. Morrison called. He made it through the night, he said. Still weak, but stable. I sat down hard on the porch step. My hands were shaking. Can he come back? Not yet. Maybe in a week. Maybe more. Depends how he responds. I told the mother that night. I spoke through the shed door like a madman. He's okay. He's safe. I promise. She was inside, silent. 2 days passed. I kept feeding them, cleaning, making notes. I barely left the property. Then, on the third day, I heard voices. Men, near the road. I peeked through the blinds. 2 guys in camo jackets, one with a rifle slung over his shoulder, were parked down by the mailbox. I stayed inside, waited. After a few minutes, they drove off. That night, I went to the local diner, mostly to hear gossip. I didn't have to wait long. You hear about that big cat they saw near Maple Ridge? Yeah, couple dogs gone missing too. Someone said it might be a mountain lion. Or worse. I stopped eating. Later, in the grocery store, I ran into Hank, my nearest neighbor. He stared at me too long, then said, "You still living up there all by yourself?" "Yeah." "What?" He squinted. "Just seems like a lot of traffic up your way lately." "Strange." I laughed it off. "Been doing some work on the place. Probably just delivery trucks." He didn't smile. That night, I moved the cubs into the cabin. I couldn't risk it. The shed was too exposed. I cleared out the mudroom, laid down thick bedding, set up a fan for air circulation. The mother followed them in on her own. She was cautious, but she came. I installed blackout curtains over every window. I covered the front-facing trail cam with a blanket. I disconnected the Wi-Fi, turned off the phone. It felt extreme, but I couldn't afford a mistake. For several days, I barely went outside. I spent most of my time preparing meals of raw meat and supplement paste I ordered under an alias. The cubs started gaining weight. The mother began to trust me more. I kept a notebook filled with notes on their behavior. The smallest cub, the one still at Morrison's, had started to sit up and even take small steps, according to the vet's texts. One day, the mother let me touch her paw, just for a second. Then, 3 days later, someone knocked on my door. No one ever knocked on my door. I opened it a crack. It was a man in a khaki uniform. "Evening," he said. "I'm with the Division of Wildlife. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" My mouth went dry. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. He looked around the property slowly, as if searching for something he hadn't seen yet. I felt my pulse in my throat. "We had a couple of reports," he said, "about a large predator in the area. House pets disappearing. Unusual tracks. Thought I'd check in, see if you noticed anything." I shook my head. "I've seen some raccoon tracks lately, but no big cats." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" I nodded. "Positive." He handed me a business card. "If you do, give me a call. We just want to keep the community safe." I took the card and watched him walk back to his truck. Only when the dust settled behind his tires did I let myself breathe. Back inside, the mother was waiting near the mudroom door. She didn't growl, but her eyes were wide. That night, I stayed up with her, sitting on the floor, whispering quietly, telling her I wouldn't let them take her kids. I meant it, but I didn't know how much longer I could hide this. I waited 2 full days after the visit from the wildlife officer before I made any kind of move. I barely slept. Every sound outside made my pulse spike. I kept imagining more men showing up in uniforms, kicking down the door, dragging the cubs away in crates while the mother screamed and fought. But nothing happened. For a few days, life inside the house settled into a tense kind of rhythm. I fed the cubs, cleaned the mudroom, logged their weight and appetite. The mother rarely left their side. Once in a while, she would glance toward the door like she was listening for danger. I did the same. The air felt heavier. Every bird call, every crack of a twig outside sent my mind spiraling into worst-case scenarios. But I kept going. We all did. Then came the phone call. Dr. Morrison called just before lunch. He's ready. I didn't even ask if he meant the smallest cub. I already knew. He's walking, eating on his own. We can bring him back today. I took a long breath. Okay, I'll come get him. But Dr. Morrison hesitated. That might not be the best idea. Why not? A couple of forest rangers were in town yesterday, asking questions. Not just about sightings, but about you. I swallowed hard. What did you tell them? Nothing. I said you helped me with trail mapping years ago, which is true. But I think your neighbors are talking. Of course they were. We decided it would be safer if he brought the cub to me. Late at night, no lights, no sound. That night, around midnight, I heard the low hum of his car pulling into the trees. I stepped outside with a red flashlight and opened the back gate. Dr. Morrison emerged from the shadows carrying a soft-sided carrier. He's strong, he whispered, eager to get out. I thanked him, my throat too tight to speak properly. Inside the house, the mother was waiting. When she saw the carrier, she stood immediately, tense but alert. I unzipped it slowly and let the little cub crawl out on his own. The moment he stepped onto the blanket, she rushed forward and sniffed him all over, licking his ears, his face, his paws. He let out a tiny squeal and collapsed against her. The other two cubs piled in around him. They were together again, and for a brief moment, it felt like we were safe. But I knew that wouldn't last. The next morning, I called a regional conservation center I had found through one of the forums. It wasn't a government agency, but a private foundation that specialized in rehabilitating large predators and reintroducing them into protected reserves. They were based several hundred miles away, but had trucks, staff, veterinarians. The man on the line, Evan, listened to everything I told him. I didn't leave anything out. My voice was steady, but inside I was unraveling. Each detail I gave him made everything more real and more fragile. When I finished, there was silence. Then he said, "First of all, thank you. What you did, most people wouldn't even try. But we can't just come and pick them up. There are permits, jurisdiction issues, and frankly, politics. How long? Best case? 2 weeks. Maybe more. They don't have 2 weeks. People are getting suspicious." He sighed. "I understand. I'll escalate it. But keep them hidden. I mean that. We'll do everything we can." I hung up, frustration boiling inside me. 2 weeks might as well be 2 years. I paced the house for hours. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That same evening, I noticed something wrong. The mother was gone. I searched the whole cabin, then the yard, then down to the stream. Nothing. No sign of her. The cubs were restless, whining, pacing. I stayed up all night. I set trail cams. I walked miles into the woods calling out softly. Still nothing. 2 days passed. Then 3. On the 4th day, I found her. She was caught in a snare trap near an old hunter's trail, less than half a mile from my cabin. Her body was twisted, jaw open, eyes still wide. She had bled out hours earlier. I dropped to my knees beside her. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there, touching her fur, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. Then the rage hit. I buried her myself. Took half the day. I wrapped her in an old tarp and laid stones over the grave. The cubs would never see her again. I would have to be the one to tell them. I didn't know how. I just knew I had to keep them alive. That night, I made my decision. I packed food, water, blankets. I built a double-layered crate big enough for the cubs. I loaded it into my truck, covered it with hay. I didn't tell anyone. Before sunrise, we were on the road. I drove back roads, avoiding towns. It took over 10 hours. The cubs stayed quiet most of the way. I think they knew something had changed. They whimpered once or twice, but mostly they just leaned into each other, small and silent. When I reached the conservation center, a team was waiting. They moved fast, quiet, efficient. They took the crate, brought the cubs into a quarantine facility. Evan met me at the gate. "They're safe now," he said. "You did it." I nodded, finally letting my shoulders drop. "Just take care of them." "We will. And we want to tell your story. With your permission, the world needs to hear this." At first, I hesitated. I wasn't looking for attention, but maybe he was right. Maybe people needed to understand what was happening in these mountains. What was being lost? I agreed. They interviewed me the next day. Then again a week later. Articles were written. A short documentary went up online. It showed the cubs, their progress, their playfulness, their strength. And it showed her grave, the stone I had carved her name into, Silent Light. I stayed a few days longer. Then I drove home to an empty cabin. The silence hit harder than I thought it would. The air felt different. The forest was still there, but something inside it had changed. It was quiet without them. I tried to get back to normal. Chopped wood, repaired the roof, cleaned the mudroom. But everything reminded me of them. The corner where the smallest cubs slept. The scratches on the wall from the other two playing. The way the mother used to sit silently at the door, guarding. Months passed. Fall came. Then snow. The mountain froze over. The trail cams caught deer, foxes, once even a bobcat. But never another snow leopard. And then, one spring morning, I got an email. No subject line. Just a video attachment. I clicked. It was footage from a trail camera in a remote reserve. A young snow leopard, strong, graceful, moving through the trees. Then he paused, turned toward the camera. For a moment, I thought he looked straight at me. And then he was gone, back into the wild. Home.